Welcome, everybody. My name is Tara McLaughlin. I am the Senior Customer Success Manager here at SmarterServices. My tenure, I've been here since 2007, so going on 14 years. I worked strictly with SmarterMeasure, and I'm really pleased to have you guys here. A lot of your names I recognize. We work together for SmarterMeasure, but there's also some new names, and I'm joined by my colleagues, Claire. Claire is she's my counterpart. Claire Skiba is our customer success manager. We have new titles, so I keep looking at it to make sure I've got that right. I used to be an account manager, so now I am the customer success manager. So pardon me as I make sure I don't mess that up. Claire works with the other SmarterMeasure schools. So if you have been working with anyone in the past, Mac or his predecessors, Claire is your new point of contact. So it's great to put her here and introduce her to all. And our Chief Academic Officer and founder, Dr. Mac Atkins, is also joining us. So we're excited to have you all here. But more importantly than anything is we have 3 SmarterMeasure clients who are going to be speaking to how they use SmarterMeasure. So we've got our panelists from Florida, Daytona State College, from Texas, El Paso Community College, and Shoreline Community College in Washington State. So this is going to be a very engaging and interactive webinar. We want to do polls. Like I said, please ask questions in the chat, and we'll cover those in the end, especially if you have them for the panelists. And without further ado, we'll get started with a poll.
And thanks, Tara. I'll tack on to your comment there about the new titles. I have a new title as well. You guys know I founded this thing and served as the CEO for several years, and I've now handed that off to my colleague, Jason Phil, that many of you know and have worked with for years and years, so glad that he's in that role. But that frees me up to do what I love the most. So my title is Chief Academic Officer, but that allows me to work with clients doing research about their SmarterMeasure data. You're going to hear about some of that today, but and one of the takeaways I want you to have from this event today is just know that I'm here for you. If you want some kind of analysis done on your it's a new readiness ranges analysis to look at the distribution of your scores, or if you want to run some correlations with SmarterMeasure scores and student success, or if you want to compare different student populations, that's what I'm here for. Nothing brings me more joy than to help a school make sense out of their data. So please reach out if I can help you. So I'm going to launch this first poll. And that poll, there's no right or wrong way for you to use SmarterMeasure. There's no particular place that you have to put it. You're going to hear 3 different stories today of how schools use it. But first of all, just kind of curious with a general question about the way you use it at your institution. Is it optional or required, or optional for some and required for others? So I am seeing the results come in. I'll give it just another minute or 2. I don't think, are you guys seeing the results yet, Tara?
I believe I've pushed it over to my shared screen. So hopefully everybody can see that as they're coming in real time. Can someone confirm for Claire, can you see the
I can't see the results come in.
I think just about everybody's voted. I'm going to go ahead and end it where it's kind of a tie for required and then optional for some and required for others. So are you guys seeing that?
I can see it.
Share results. Now I found it.
Let's see.
Okay, now I can see it.
Okay, good.
Perfect.
Yeah.
There it is.
So we did have a tie. A lot of schools do require it of their students. Some, have different populations. Some it's required for. Some it's optional for. There's no right and wrong way. So we'll have a couple more polls in a little bit, but glad to get that information.
All right. Well, let's kick it off. Claire, with introducing our first speaker.
We have our first speaker, Kara Parks with Daytona State College. Kara is the online retention coordinator for fully online students. She works with academic advising and online studies departments to assist in the success of online learners. So we're excited to hear what you have to say, Kara.
Thanks so much. So I've prepared a little bit of information. We're pretty new to the SmarterMeasure game. We just, as Matt covered, started using it We got our rights in April and started rolling it out to our students in a little test group in the summer and in the fall semester. So I'll cover more of how we've rolled it out to students. So you can go right ahead. And I just wanted to kind of cover, what my role is. We are fortunate enough, my role was created as I came into it to have, a position designated to this particular thing of just supporting online students. And I am the person who creates a lot of the resources at DSC. I work with online students directly through some advising. I also work with online studies to structure, courses and revise how we deliver our all the different things that we do for online students. So that's a little bit about who I am. And you can move to the next slide. So I just want to cover how we got to using SmarterMeasure. So from 2017 is when we started noticing that our students were not necessarily ready for online classes. They weren't sure what was expected of them. And so our college started working on how we were going to fill that gap. In 2018, Online Studies and Academic Advising partnered together and they developed a student online readiness initiative. We utilized an assessment in our orientation that was created by Penn State. So I know Kimberly was here from Penn State. It's an open access, just 20 questions is what we had pared their assessment down to and added it into our orientation. Then my job was created in 2019 and I worked with students just going through that data and their new student orientation. And then we also received a grant at the end of 2020, which I'll talk about here in a second, which funded our use of SmarterMeasure and also helped us hire another advisor to work with me too to cover this information and ground with students. So move forward. So the initial one from Penn State is, as I said, open access. It covers just a couple of questions basically in each of these areas. Reasons why they're going to take online classes. We actually asked them, we added an open-ended question where students indicate why they're choosing online. We looked at just a couple of questions around learning styles. So do they work best in a group or on their own? Looking at, do they learn well through reading? Their time management, troubleshooting with technology, their comfortability. Access is a really big issue for our students. We are primarily Pell eligible, higher need, and we want to make sure that we ask those sorts of questions in the orientation and upfront so that we know how to support our students and what to provide. And we also want to know how willing they are to ask for help as they are going into, primarily individually based, going into their classes, and they're going to have to reach out for friends and for help from their professors and all of that. So that's what we're assessing already in the orientation and continue to. So once we got the grant at the end of 2019, we started going to work right away. We have 5 years, we have several $1 million, and a lot of those initiatives that were through the Lens grant actually really helped us during COVID because they were all around supporting students, particularly online. A lot of what this grant entails ended up becoming a lot of what my job, morphed into, which is wonderful. I have a background in counseling and I get to use that to help support students and look at just the whole student. And this grant really helped us to provide resources to do those things for our students. So the grant is covering a limited number of SmarterMeasure assessments. Basically, we can administer it to 1,000 students per year. And we also started up with an initial 500 to just get the ball rolling and create a control group so that we could then, look at our general population of students and see how that worked in order to roll it out to the 1,000 that we were going to choose that we have access to. So we're basically through that. You're good. We are looking at, we're being measured on critical gateway courses. So those first few classes, they're super representative of how our students will do. So yeah, you can move forward and I'll cover a little bit more about that in a few slides. So our strategy, rolling out this in the grant, we called it a tech studio. We weren't really sure what it was going to be, but an intervention for our students that are struggling and online. It eventually ended up being called the Online Success Seminar, and that's what I'll share more about here in the next slide. So how did we end up selecting our students for these 1,000 slots? We have a set number. And so looking at how we wanted to roll this out, from going like accessing that whole counseling background thing, we know that, for students that want to see a change, just like anybody in any life situation, you have to be ready for that. You have to identify a need in your own self. You have to be ready to move forward. That's the most optimal place to be in order to create change in whatever capacity in your life. So we wanted to make sure that we kept this open to students who elected to enroll in the seminar. So a lot of times this is students that are going in, especially during COVID, nervous about online classes, not sure where to start. And they, want the help. They don't know exactly what it's going to take to be successful, and they raise their hand. So option 2 was the elect to enroll. This is for self-improvement purposes. They're usually referred by a faculty member, a staff member. A lot of the staff members would be like an advising, because they're required to do a new student advising session. And a lot of times they share their nerves about that during that session. So that is kind of the biggest place that we're seeing, students can end up being pushed to us, but also through faculty. And so through that, we've basically partnered with a lot of different departments and talked through this, done a presentation with the different departments to talk about what this resource is. A lot of our faculty want resources. They're being told all the time that students are nervous about online, or that, they're seeing the gaps themselves there in the classroom online. So this was a great way we could roll it out with that. The option 1 was meet criteria. Basically, what I did was we're fortunate to have some predictive software. So I looked at the predictive software, looked at what are big predictors that students won't persist in online. And I used that, and I created a formula to find our most at-risk students. So for example, these are students that get an F or a W or a D. Students that don't have higher than a 2.75 GPA, students that are enrolling later. We looked at all of this criteria and ended up creating what we could sustainably as a college, with looking at this formula. How are we going to roll it out? How do we pull this data? We utilized the things that we knew that we could track right at the beginning of the semester and throughout the semester, and created a formula to filter those students into our online success seminar. So our most at risk, it's basically our bottom 10% of fully online, the ones that we are the most worried about. So this is the option 1 criteria, taking classes fully online, they're degree seeking, and they meet 3 or more markers for predicted non-persistence into the next semester. So these are our 2 different filters for the online success seminar. So for the voluntary online success seminar folks, we created a form that they can fill out, that advisors, faculty members, all that can link and send it out to students. It's very basic information. And then within a couple days, we enroll them within the courses, what we promise. So students, faculty, staff, they can all find this enrollment. It's housed in an info guide that we have for online students. And it's in every email that I have. It's included in that email. So at the bottom of my signature. And so I just want to share what we've included in this seminar. So this is a 3-hour time commitment for our students. It's all based around SmarterMeasure. So basically they go in, I'll cover that we have a pre and post survey. They complete the SmarterMeasure, and then from there we have created, we have a couple, an adjunct and a full-time faculty member that receive funding to create activities based around these different sections. And we guessed the first year, what do we think is going to pop up most, that our students are going to struggle with the most? And then we created activities based on that. Our grant funded H5P access for us, which is basically interactive. Makes like videos, have the ability to have like interactive questions that are asked throughout. We have a lot of really cool tools that we can use through that. That was something we also got from the grant. And we also have a learner's notebook for reflective practices. So so that they can start to synthesize that, because we know that students that actually put things into action retain it better. And it is student driven as well. You can go ahead. So this, the entire online success seminar is space themed. So this is why my presentation is space themed. We want to make it fun. Our faculty members really made it so cool, interesting, utilized a lot of different Canva and other options to make this look, awesome. So I'm just going to give you a glimpse into, these are our two faculty members that, what it looks like. We've made it accessible on a lot of different formats, so they can access it on their computer, for example. You can go to the next slide. They can access it on a tablet. You can go ahead to the next. And then they can also access it on their phones, as we know a lot of students do, and we track the data on that. You can go to the next slide. So I just want to share a little bit about what we've learned so far. We're about a year in, and I'll cover some of that. So we integrated a pre and post survey into the seminar. This basically is a survey to assess the skills that are already reported in SmarterMeasure that they're going to get outcomes on based on their answers to your guys' questions. But we want to know preliminarily what they think about those different skills, where they think they're at. And we also asked them about the different campus support services like academic support center, our writing center, all of that. We wanted to know what kinds of supports that they're accessing as a group that's primarily struggling in online classes. The post survey reassesses them again with their skill set now that they have taken the SmarterMeasure and done the different activities. And it also asks about their satisfaction in the seminar. This has been really helpful because the pre and post results in the survey have gone up. They very much level out in the post survey after taking SmarterMeasure. Our scores vary anywhere out of 5 from about a low 3 to a high 4. And after in the post survey, students score across the board in the mid 4s. So it's definitely leveled out a lot of their feelings about how they are performing. You can go to the next slide. And so, as I mentioned earlier, we rolled out SmarterMeasure, the first 500, to our summer students. Our summer students, as many of yours might be, are our most successful in fully online courses. That is probably because a lot of our students in the summer are trying to get done with their degree faster, maybe because of external, like having a job promotion based on a degree, things like that. Our online students, there's a lot of online course offerings during the summer. So our summer students know what they're getting into. They know they're going to be fully online. And so they are a little more successful than our other fall and spring cohort groups. So we first rolled out SmarterMeasure with them outside of the seminar or anything, and just had them take it. And we looked at their average readiness by section, their standard deviations. So how much does it change, between that whole student group, and then their rank order of their average readiness in all the different areas. You can go to the next. And then we're now comparing that with the SmarterMeasure results of our fall and spring students who have been enrolled in the online success seminar. And there have definitely been changes from the summer group to the fall and spring group. And it's been interesting to see for sure. And what we've also done is use the learning styles, multiple intelligences, all of that from the SmarterMeasure. And we've used that to bridge the gap for our faculty to talk more about the different ways that they could design the content. What we're seeing in our students in spring and fall is that they're scoring much higher in oral learning than our other group in the summer. And so we've talked through the possibility of using music or sound, or just doing some cues like that, assigning like songs with different kinds of, like, for example, in Spanish, doing the different conjugations using a song or things like that, that they could maybe utilize in their courses to help their students retain things better, especially the students that are struggling. We've also seen a preference for solitary over social, which is great. We're glad that they're primarily going to be on their own a lot of the times, besides just doing like online group projects. So it's great, reassuring. It's also just interesting to look at the differences in the two different groups. And so that's how we're utilizing it at DSE. And definitely let me know if you have any questions. Feel free to add me on LinkedIn at any point, ask anything after the seminar is over as well, this webinar. So thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Kara. I really appreciate you sharing that. And as you were making those comments about counseling, it reminded me of that old joke. How many counselors does it take to change a light bulb? Well, just one, but the light bulb really has the want to change. And while that's humorous, there's a lot of truth there. And,
Exactly.
Measuring scales like locus of control and willingness to ask for help, and all those get at that student's desire really to want to change. And that's very important. Glad you see that truth. So glad to hear Kara describe how her institution is positioning it in their online success seminar, which I would call kind of a form of orientation. So here's our next poll, which asks to select all of these that apply. There's lots of different places in the student experience you can position SmarterMeasure. There's no right and wrong place. Lots of schools position it in more than one place. So check all of these that you think apply to your institution. Do you place it early in recruitment? Do you put it in admissions? Is it in your registration process? Orientation is a common model. Academic advisors assign it. Other programs like first year experience, quality enhancement plans, or even in academic courses. So we're getting a few returns in. I'll let it go for a little bit longer and then I'll share it with you. And what I'm seeing looks typical from what we see when we ask this. And again, we have two that are a tie. We get another second or two. Oh, just had a tiebreaker. So we'll go ahead and end it and let me share those results. So the number one way that you guys today use it is in orientation, and that's pretty representative of our population of schools that use it. That's my favorite model. I love the orientation model because you can have discussion board questions about it, but I think it's really a great fit because an orientation is a school's attempt to say, hey, we're here to support you. Here's some things we want you to know about the institution, and here's some things we want you to know about yourself. And so it's just a great environment, a great context, but it's not the only place you can put it. You see there, you guys have a lot of first year experience programs, equipping your advisors with it. Glad to see academic courses there as being high with 42%. So thanks for participating in that poll. And we'll now move on to our next resource person.
Our next speaker today is Luz Cadena with El Paso Community College. Luz is the interim director for distance learning support services, and she also is an adjunct instructor teaching both on-site and online courses.
Hello, thank you. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for having me here. We'll go ahead and proceed with the next slide. So El Paso Community College is a 2-year institution located in El Paso, Texas. We are a border community. We border Mexico to our south, and we have students, faculty, and staff who come from across the international line to teach, to work at, and to take courses at EPCC. We also border New Mexico to the north, one of our states here. And so we are really kind of a cross-national interstate metroplex here at EPCC. And so it really gives us a really interesting mix, population mix at EPCC. Next slide, please. So at EPCC, based on the survey that Dr. Atkins provided us earlier, we are an institution that does the optional for some and required for others. And then on the very last one we did, we kind of incorporate a SmarterMeasure into various areas also. First of all, it can be part of our recruitment tool. We do have a link to SmarterMeasure on the distance learning website. So the preface is, if you're considering taking online courses at EPCC, take SmarterMeasure, and we're hoping that the SmarterMeasure helps students make those informed decisions. But we also promote SmarterMeasure in lots of other areas. We do have a distance learning online, a DLSS online learning at EPCC brochure. which we've given to a new student orientation, we've given to counselors. So any students who come in who are new to EPCC or are accepted to the college but are registering for courses can get this brochure and get lots of information about online learning, including the LMS, but also about SmarterMeasure and how SmarterMeasure can again help them make those informed decisions. Distance learning for the past, I would say, several years would send out a large postcard to all students registered for online courses, including our dual credit, our dual enrollment courses. And it was just some information to get them started because they've registered for online courses. And again, we put a blurb in there about SmarterMeasure and where they could go to the EPCC website to do that. But since we are working from home it's been over a year now that we've been working from home, we've not been on campus to mail out those postcards. So for a year now, what we instead designed is an online learning handbook, which really does allow us to add more content than just a small postcard because all our students were now online students. So we designed this online handbook. We try to keep it as short as possible, but with Word, you can do a great table of contents that's clickable and it takes students directly to that page. And we do have a SmarterMeasure section in there and that goes out to all students. We just finished revising the one for summer 2021. And yesterday we sent that out to all counselors, the student success staff, librarians, because our librarians sometimes get questions about how do I register for online courses or do you know anything about online courses? Librarians, the Center for Students with Disabilities, financial aid. We send it to them also. So anyone we could think of that could benefit from this brochure because they engage with students, we provide it to them so they can share this handbook to students. We also sent a link to the handbook because it's virtual to all students through our LMS. We are a Blackboard school. So we sent a link to that handbook saying if you're thinking about taking summer courses, you're getting ready to register, here's some information about summer courses. And of course, SmarterMeasure is front and center right there on that handbook. So it helps us drive it from that optional side. And it's been quite helpful with that. Next slide, please. So on the other side at EPCC, for some it is required. We do have courses that make the SmarterMeasure assessment as part of their week 1 activity. They're kind of intro to the course activity, especially a lot of our Education 1300 courses. That's the Learning Frameworks course. It's a kind of intro to college course that all students are required to take. They're not all required to take it the very first semester. They're at EPCC, but many of them do. And counselors do encourage them to do that. And so many of our Education 1300 instructors have integrated SmarterMeasure into that, lesson plan when it comes to having students design or plan out their academic plan for the next 2 years and beyond. So they do incorporate it. But it's not just Education 1300 instructors. There are a lot of other instructors who also incorporate SmarterMeasure into their week 1. I've done it myself in my history courses. We have one instructor who teaches criminal justice, Mr. Scott Mann, who has done some great kind of studies within his own course on SmarterMeasure and the impact in his course. And he's presented that here within our institution. And he's been great, and other faculty members have been great about letting their colleagues know about SmarterMeasure and how they incorporate it into their classes. And that's been a big selling point on our end, is having faculty share what they do in their courses. But it's been very helpful. Next slide, please. So we, as a distance learning department, want to make sure that faculty are aware of this wonderful tool to help drive student success. And so we are in the process of transitioning. Again, we are a Blackboard school. We're in the process of transitioning to Blackboard Learn Original to Blackboard Learn Ultra. And all our faculty are required to go through this training. And it's taking us a little bit of time because we have 1,200 plus faculty. But we took the opportunity that we're going to have all these faculty take the training to incorporate SmarterMeasure into our training. So the last unit of our online training is called Championing Student Success. And lesson 26 specifically focuses on learner readiness and support. And SmarterMeasure is a part of that. So based on the great resources that Tara has provided us, and the great resources on the website also, we were able to to do a couple of pages a lesson, and we actually have faculty go in and take the SmarterMeasure themselves. We require them to at least take two of those, or assess themselves in two of those elements, because it can take a while. So we want them to get a feel for what the assessment is like. And just like we would have our students do, we have them reflect on what they learned about themselves. And that's the other part of the training, making sure that faculty know that for this assessment to really be effective, it can't just be having students take it and then you forget about it. There has to be some follow-up. There has to be some reflection when it comes to having students think about their results. And Tara did a training for us. It's been, I think, almost 2 years now. And she provided us some great resources, some prompts for discussion boards, or I think journals are probably the best thing, because some of those things can be rather personal. Academic plans where students can kind of do this handout where they can kind of map out where they want to improve. And of course, faculty can develop their own lessons based on SmarterMeasure. But that's so important that faculty understand that there has to be that follow-up with students. The other thing we've encouraged faculty to do is to allow students to submit a report they've perhaps done for another class. It is very possible that in any given week, on that first week of the term, a student's being asked to complete the SmarterMeasure 2 or 3 times because they have 2 or 3 faculty who are using SmarterMeasure. So we tell faculty, if the student says, I just took it for another class yesterday, will you accept my report? To please say yes, not have them take it again. And we encourage students to also ask, use their voice and to ask their faculty, I just took it for another course, would you please accept my report? So we make sure that faculty and students are both aware of those things also. Next slide, please. And here you have some of the data from EPCC. Again, we're trying to get as many faculty as we can to be aware of SmarterMeasure, even if it's extra credit to that result. We would like to get some more training so that counselors are much more aware of SmarterMeasure. We have touched on it before, but it's really difficult to find any time to train counselors because they're kind of busy 24/7, 365 days a year. So it can be difficult to kind of get all the counselors together to do some training with them. But that's something we definitely want to do, and we want to continue to make SmarterMeasure a really important part of the recruiting process, the registration process. And I think it's just a useful tool, no matter where the student is. It's best if it's done at the beginning, but I think it's a very important tool that students can really use to improve their academic journey at any institution.
All right, thank you very much for sharing that. And the reason I was so excited that you would share that today is the variety of your approach. You guys position it in places where it's optional. You have it in places where it's more required. You do a great job training your faculty with it. You do a super job getting word out about it, everything from the internet to brochures, postcards, handbooks. That really great examples there of how you're disseminating that information. So thank you for sharing that. I hope that our attendees maybe heard something that's a good practice at your institution they can take back with them. So as we go into our last poll here, one use case or one place to position SmarterMeasure that you haven't heard as much about, Les just there alluded to it at the end, talking about training counselors, but whatever you call them, counselors, advisors, success coaches, persons whose role it is to talk to students, a lot of schools use that. So let me launch this poll, and it is, which of these 3 statements most closely resembles how your advisors, or whatever you call them, utilize SmarterMeasure? And the top is, your advisors use it a lot. They talk to students about it. The second is, well, they suggest students to take it, but really don't have time to follow up. Or the third, your advisors aren't involved in your use case. No right and wrong answer there, but just kind of curious about the level at which your advisors are involved. And as Brandon is sharing with us in a moment, he will mention how that they integrate it with somewhat with their advisors as well. So it looks like we're about all in. So I will end that and share the results with you. And so most of the attendees today do involve their advisors, and that's a great practice, exactly for what you just said, is that it's one thing to administer an assessment, it's really another thing to get the student to reflect on their scores. And that's very well done in that conversation with the advisors. You mentioned a resource that we share that if any of your schools don't have this resource, let Tara or Claire know. We call it the advisor script. And it really puts words into the mouth of your advisors of what do you say when a student scores high or low on any of the subscales that we measure. And obviously, it's a training tool. They can say whatever they choose to, but it really is good for the advisors to know what we're measuring. So I will stop and we'll advance on to Brandon with Shoreline.
Right. Brandon Fryman here from Shoreline Community College. I just wanted to say, Cara, that was a great way to use students' learning styles to reach out and to the faculty members to say, hey, these are learning styles. Definitely something I'm going to take a look into. And Luz, I really like that your school puts a lot of that emphasis on SmartMeasure for the students way at the beginning. We don't necessarily do that just yet, but that's something definitely we'll probably start doing in the future. I guess I was supposed to allow somebody to introduce me first. Sorry.
I think I'm the one that messed that up when I handed it off to you. So I'm going to let Claire tell everyone who you are.
Thank you. Yes, our third and final speaker is Brandon Fryman with Shoreline Community College. Brandon is an instructional designer. He focuses on getting students ready for online learning and also assists faculty with building accessible and inclusive classrooms. So carry on, Brandon.
All right. All right, so we currently have around 5,100 students every quarter. We are a community college, and we use SmartMeasure to bridge our obligation gap on our campus to try to meet the needs of what our students are trying to fit the needs of our students. We started using SmarterMeasure in 2015. We created a institute on our campus that trains faculty how to use Canvas in an online environment. And this was an assignment in which we built into our LMS system. We use Canvas as well. And we built a whole assignment off of the SmarterMeasure system, whatever I'm going to call it, the services that we have with you. And it was always optional for faculty to use for their students. And we allow our faculty to edit that assignment in any way they want and use that assignment if they want to use. So it's always just optional for faculty. We also had asked our advisors to have their students take a look at it and use it. And we put the information all up on our e-learning website. So students, if they come to our website and see what kind of services that we use, pre-COVID, it was all there for advisors, for faculty to use. So students didn't have to do it right in our Canvas site. They could do it on their own if they wanted to. And once again, since we had multiple teachers or instructors using this and advisors, we also put it out there. Like Lou said, if a student did it, please don't make them do it again. Just give them the email or whatever, just allow them to pass through that. Now that we are in an online environment, we do make it that all new students to our campus take the SmartMeasure assignment. We created a getting ready. Next slide, please. Sorry. We created a thing called getting ready for online learning. And all the data that I'm showing today is exploratory. So we're not really trying to draw causality or causations or anything like that. It is just exploratory. We kind of use it to see what it is, like I said in that last slide, what kind of needs do our students have that we should kind of bridge those gaps. So next slide, please. So far, I think we've had a total of just under 12,000 students who have taken the Smarter Measure assessment. And like I said, it is mandatory now for all new students. There are a couple students that we don't make it mandatory, like our continuing education students, students only at our school for ESL or ABE students. And the Getting Ready for Online Learning is a Canvas program that we have. We have 5 modules. The first module is focusing on SmartMeasure. The second module is teaching them how to use Canvas, and the other 3 modules are all about resources on our campus. And with the SmartMeasure assignment that we've created in there, we have follow-up like journal question where we ask an open-ended question, 2 open-ended questions. I've got to remember what kind of life factors or technical competency, what is it in there that you do well at? And what is it that you still need help from us? And what we do with that information is we try to get grants and stuff to help bridge technology issues, typing issues. We get tutors out of this information. We get our counselors / advisors in on that information so we can help build whatever tools they need in order to help students. And of course, our department as well. We have been able to get laptops and cameras and different things for our students to borrow with all that information that we get. Yeah. So who did and did not take the Smarter Measure in fall? So in the fall, we had around 1,200 students complete Smart Measure. There were a couple of students that had previously taken it. So we took those numbers out. When you see the graphs in the next couple of slides, those numbers, that 101 students have been taken out of the data. And we're taking a look at who's taking the Smart Measure assignment, who's completing them. We have the lowest completion rate was among basic skill students, which of course, that's the lowest rate because we don't make it mandatory for those students. In terms of race and ethnicity, we're seeing Black, African American, and Native American and Alaskan Native students that had the lowest completion rates. And the highest completion rates were within the international students. And like I said before, no continuing ed students, no ASL, no ABE students are having to take this. So grades for students who took Smarter Measure in the fall are slightly better than those who did not for most groups. The only group that we saw a lower GPA was within the American Indian Native American population. But once again, the number of students in this category are really low on our campus, so we don't want to jump to any kind of conclusions there. With the other GPAs, we're seeing a difference between students who have taken the Smart Measure and who have not taken the Smart Measure. So once again, preliminary data, we are seeing that the only group in which was lower was the international students and American Indian students. And when it comes to the GPA, the information that we got, it was from any student who has taken at least one class that did not take in which that one class was not just pass or fail. And those 101 students who previously have taken the Smart Measure assignment, we took them out as well. So did those students who took Smart Measure do better in the spring? Once again, yes. So we keep seeing this over and over for each quarter in which we run our data, that students who take it tend to have higher GPAs than students who have not taken that information. So what we're doing with that, like Lou said, I really like your idea how you're trying to reach out to those students. We did create postcards and send it out to students who have not finished that training to make sure that they are trying to take that training so we can make sure that we're bridging that gap as well, reaching as many students as we possibly can. Since we're seeing information in which students are taking the Smart Measure class tend to have higher GPAs. And I believe this is my last slide. So are those who took Smart Measure in the fall passing more classes than those who did not? Yes, once again, we're seeing students who are taking the Smart Measure class tend to finish their classes more than students who are not taking the Smart Measure course.
All right, thank you, Brandon, for sharing that. Those are certainly some interesting early insights that you're getting into your data. And as you're sharing that, I have a, a thought that I want to share. But before I do that, let me say we've got about 10 minutes here. If you've got a question or a comment, you can either type that into chat or just put in chat, hey, I want to ask my question. We can actually click allow to talk. I can do that, Tara, and we can let any of our attendees ask a question. So if you want to verbalize a question, just say so in chat. If you want to type in your question, type a question there. We'd love to hear from you. Could be a question, could be a comment back to one of our panelists or whatever. But while you're thinking about that, let me make one observation from what Brandon was sharing. What I like about their case study is that, it was optional for some students, not optional for other students. And when you do that, and that kind of gives you a neat thing to look at in the data, because there's differences in those populations. One advantage of making it required of all students is you get a distribution of scores across the good, bad, and ugly, right? You get scores from everyone. If you don't require it, then what you result in is what we call self-selection bias. So only the good guys, so to speak, choose to take it. The students who are the slackers, who probably need it the most, are the ones who often choose not to take it. However, if you're in a mode where it's optional, even though there is self-selection bias, what you're getting is some behavioral data that you're not getting when it's required, because the behavioral data is that student telling you by that action of taking it or not taking it, how interested, how engaged are they in their learning. And we have several schools that present it in that optional mode using a feature that we have. You may not be aware of it, but Tara and Claire can turn this on for you if you'd like, called disaggregate mode. Usually we offer SmarterMeasure in sequential mode, which is, one section right after the next. Disaggregate mode is kind of like a buffet style. The student sees a menu of all the 7 scales that we offer. They see a description of what's in the scale. They see an estimate of how long it would take. And then they can choose which scales they take and in what order they take them. So that's giving you some behavioral data. So if you are using it in an optional mode, consider turning on disaggregate mode. And what some schools find is it's not just a yes, no, the student did take it or they did not take it, but it's how many of the sections of the assessment did they take? Did they take just 1, or did they take 5, or did they take 6? So just letting you know that that's there, that disaggregate mode, and just making you aware of self-selection bias in that behavioral data. So Tara or Claire, if you've been looking at the chat, do we have any questions?
A couple were asking if we'll be sending the slides and the recording, which of course, yes, we will after the call. We will be sending a survey for those of you who might have joined a little later. We'll be sending a survey, a follow-up survey. If you complete the survey, you'll be entered in a drawing for a $20 Starbucks, Amazon gift card. We'd love your feedback, but you'll also, again, receive the slides and the recording. So those will be sent to you. And you please share it with your colleagues who aren't able to attend, who would be interested in learning more about what was discussed today. And Mark had a comment, Mark Shader. It's one thing to have students take SmarterMeasure. It's another thing to find the resources to go over the results with students and explain the ramifications and providing resources based on those results. And that's very true. And we provide resources about the advising script, the discussion board questions, the paper write-ups, And schools are very creative. As Lou said, she turned those discussion board questions into journal entries. Since some of those constructs are more personal, and some students might not feel comfortable divulging those parts of their private matters in a discussion board setting. So that they would be more comfortable though divulging that in a journal type entry. So that's definitely another way to repurpose that information. And we just value when schools such as Daytona and El Paso and Shoreline Community Colleges will come and talk about how they use it, because you can see how they're making this service work for them and their students. And um, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the survey or email us after. I can't see the slides with the next one, so I don't know if it's the contact information. I believe it is. Yes.
There you go.
So Mac did link to the survey here. Again, we'll send that in the email. But if you have any questions for our co-panelists, feel free to let us know. As Kara said, follow them on LinkedIn, and just thank you so much for your time. I will give you 7 minutes back unless there are other questions.
I think that's good. Thank you all for attending. Hopefully you've heard something today that sparked a thought that said, hey, that's something we can do to improve our process, another place we can put it, another group that we can involve it with. Maybe we need to involve our faculty and our faculty training about it. So I hope there's something practical you picked up today. Please do fill out that survey, and you guys have a great day. Thank you again, panelists.
Thank you, everybody. We'll be in touch.